first we're going to start with CNN's Brian Stelter. So here actually is the Washington Post's, what is her name? Annie Applebaum. So at the University of Chicago, students ask a left-wing reporter about the media cover-up for Hunter Biden. Watch his question and watch her arrogant reaction. It perfectly encapsulates why so many distrust the media. And so that's who this is the person who, I don't know who this person is. Clay Travis. He tweeted out this video.
He's like a MAGA sports guy.
Oh, he's a sports guy? Okay. Anyway, so here's the video.
Let's take a... Amazing. Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. I'm Daniel Schmidt. I'm a freshman at the University of Chicago. My question is for Miss Applebaum. So in 2020, you wrote, "Those who live outside the Fox News bubble do not, of course, need to learn any of the stuff about Hunter Biden," referring to his laptop, of course. A poll later after that found that if voters knew about the content of the laptop, 16% of Joe Biden voters would have acted differently. Now, of course, we know a few weeks ago, the New York Times confirmed that the content is real. Do you think the media acted inappropriately when they instantly dismissed Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation? And what can we learn from that in ensuring that what we label as disinformation is truly disinformation and not reality?
My problem with Hunter Biden's laptop is I think it's totally irrelevant. I mean, it's not whether it's disinformation or, I mean, I don't think the...
So Annie Applebaum is just given the facts that she's ignoring. The fact is 16% of the people polled who voted for Joe Biden said it would have affected their vote had they known about the Hunter Biden laptop was actually authenticated or was real, wasn't Russian disinformation. So that's why it matters. And there's, by the way, there's lots of stuff in there that matters. So she's making that up. She's being stupid on purpose. She's pretending that she doesn't know what the contents of that laptop are. Would you agree that there was things in that laptop that were that are of interest to American voters, Max?
It's totally irrelevant to Joe Biden's victory. Just let's not talk about it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
We should know who Anne Applebaum is. I mean,
okay,
she is one of the premier neocon pundits in Washington, who was on the board of the National Endowment for Democracy, which is, the regime change arm wing of the U.S. government, was set up under the watch of Reagan's CIA director. It's basically a CIA cutout. Her husband is a Polish diplomat who's deeply involved in NATO. He was a journalist who got so excited when he was covering the Afghan Mujahideen that he actually picked up an AK and attacked a Soviet barracks. And when he was called out on it later on, he said, "Well, I only hit the barracks 3 times in the wall. I didn't shoot any soldiers." Radek Sikorsky, I think his name is. And she recently on Hillary Clinton's podcast claimed without any evidence at all that Tucker Carlson was controlled by an agent of Russian intelligence. He produced no evidence to support that, and Hillary went, mm-hmm. So that's the kind of disinformation that she's accustomed to spouting. I mean, she's actually a part of the U.S. global disinformation infrastructure.
And these people are at the University of Chicago being interviewed by David Axelrod, former Barack Obama top staffer, and they're pretending that someone else is the people who are disseminating disinformation,
right,
as opposed to them, which, again, remember, he was from government. The biggest purveyors of misinformation and lies are the government. That would be him. Second would be the corporate media. That would be her. And now they're pretending someone else, like they're the they're the people who are guarding authenticity. They're going to make sure that misinformation doesn't get out. They're the biggest purveyors of it. So of course they're the one running around doing that. It's very Machiavellian. You accuse your opponent of the thing you're the most egregious offender of, right? So now they're supposed to be the gatekeepers of what's real and what's not. And of course you saw her answer. She says, "Well, I think that." So it doesn't matter if it was authentic. It doesn't matter if we can censor it. If we decide it's not really important, we can lock out the oldest newspaper in America from their social media accounts if they want to report on something that's actually factual, because you decided it doesn't really matter. So censorship, this person gets to decide when censorship is cool, and he is always cool with censorship because he's from the government. Okay.
Hunter Biden's business relationships have anything to do with who should be president of the United States. So I don't.
She doesn't think that the vice president's son, business dealings in foreign countries where his father is in charge of the policy for the United States, she doesn't think that that has anything to do with anything. Well, it has tons of stuff. Now we find out from that laptop that he was getting funds for biolabs in Ukraine while he was also investing in the companies that were running those biolabs. And his dad was picking the prosecutors for the government in Ukraine. His dad meaning Joe Biden. So she's just a liar. So these people are, he's a liar. He's from the government. She's from the Washington Post. She's 100% liar. And she's from she works for the NED.
She's on the board of the NED. And
that is unbelievable.
The business relationships of a presidential son do not matter. Unless their name is Donald Trump Jr.
That's right.
And then, we focus on his meetings with some music publicist in Trump Tower and Russian lady. And Anne Applebaum was all over that.
Yeah, when Donald Trump Jr. had a meeting with a lawyer, right, and a music producer, he should be impeached. Trump should be impeached for that. They didn't call the FBI. They just had a meeting with people who said they had dirt on Hillary Clinton. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton is funding the dossier, which is dirt that came out of the Kremlin. According to the guy who put it together, he got that dirt out of the Kremlin to indict Donald Trump.
And lied about it. I mean, Perkins Coie was used to cover the fact that the Clinton campaign was funding the dossier that they were filtering through all these hacks and frauds like David Corn. And, Hillary Clinton was harshly punished for that. I mean, she was really held accountable.
So we're going to actually talk about that later in the show. We're going to talk about that very thing. Her funding, the P dossier, as we like to call it, the spy, the Christopher Steele P dossier, and then lied to investigators about if she funded it. So we're going to talk about that. So that was hilarious. So now here's Brian. This is Brian Stelter, right? You know him from the CNNs, and he doesn't understand why more people trust Joe Rogan than trust CNN. I don't know. Why don't you watch both shows? Then you'll know why people trust Joe Rogan over CNN. Nobody even watches CNN, let alone trust them. So you know how bad the news media is? The bad news media. More Democrats watch Tucker Carlson than watch MSNBC or CNN? Did you know that? Did you know that Tucker Carlson has more Democrats watching him than CNN or MSNBC? Isn't that surprising? It was to me. So here's Brian Stelter. So he's going to get a question along the same vein. Here we go.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Christopher Phillips. I'm a first year at the college. My question is for Mr. Stelter. You've all spoken extensively about Fox News being a purveyor of disinformation, but CNN is right up there with them. They pushed the Russian collusion hoax. They pushed the Jussie Smollett hoax. They smeared Justice Kavanaugh as a rapist, and they also smeared Nick Sandmann as a white supremacist. And yes, they dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop affair as pure Russian disinformation. With mainstream corporate journalists becoming little more than apologists and cheerleaders for the regime, is it time to finally declare that the canon of journalistic ethics is dead or no longer operative? All the mistakes of the mainstream media, and CNN in particular, seem to magically all go in one direction. Are we expected to believe that this is all just some sort of random coincidence, or is there something else behind it?
It's too bad. It's time for lunch. There's a clock that says 30 seconds. But I think my honest answer to you, and I'll come over and talk in more detail.
This is his honest answer. That was the joke answer that they only have 30 seconds and they want to go to lunch. Here's his real answer to that question. You ready? Here we go.
After this, is that I think you're describing a different channel than the one that I watch.
Everything that guy said was true. You'll notice that Brian Stelter is not going to disagree with one fact that guy just launched at him. He's not going to mention the Hunter Biden thing. He's not going to mention all the misinformation they spewed. He's not even going to mention Chris Cuomo, being caught being unethically covering his brother and lying about his own COVID. They're not going to cover any of that. He's not going to even mention it. And he's not going to mention that they covered a evidence-free conspiracy theory that red-baited the president of the United States and called him a traitor for 4 straight years. Of course, they're going to. So here's what the rest of his answer is.
Understand that is a popular right-wing narrative about CNN.
He says it's a popular right-wing narrative. Now, I don't know if you remember, but when Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton in 2016, there were roomfuls of fucking lefty Democrats chanting CNN sucks. Do you remember that? I remember that. CNN sucks. Those weren't Fox News viewers. Those weren't right-wingers. You can be firmly on the left like I am and think CNN sucks, which they do. But that's all they got. That's all they have left now is to try to divide people who criticize them. Oh, you're a Trumper. You're a this. You're a... That's it. That's all they got. Okay, here we go.
I think it's important when we talk about shared reality and democracy, all these networks, all these news outlets have to defend democracy. When they screw up, admit it.
He's a defender of Max. He's a defender of democracy. That's what CNN does. They defend all these networks are defenders of democracy. What about all that list of lies that guy just read to you? You're not going to address any of them? He's defending democracy, Max. Let's play the rest and we'll get you in.
But when Benjamin Hall, the Fox correspondent, was wounded in Ukraine, the news crews at CNN and the New York Times stopped what they were doing, and they tried to help.
Oh my God!
They tried to help him get out of the country. They tried to find the dead crew
CNN,
members.
they're such
That's
good people.
He's
hiding behind.
That's how they actually do work together. To your question about sharing those kinds of connections and trust, we don't talk about it enough, though. We don't share that reality.
Oh my
about
God!
You're not even talking about what the guy asked you. That's how much. You know how much you don't talk about it. You're not addressing anything that guy said.
He's deploying a wounded journalist as like a human shield.
Yeah, for this criticism.
We all came together and just held hands and stood in front of the Putin's bullets that struck Benjamin Hall. Except for some reason, journalists in Ukraine keep getting shot near Ukrainian checkpoints. We're not going to talk about that. We all came together in support of imperial goals. And that's what we need to do today. And you're just a naysayer.
Yeah, you're a right winger.
You're against democracy. It's like if you criticize Fauci, you're against science. If you criticize Stelter, you're against democracy.
That's right. You don't. They're the defenders of democracy. Here we go.
That happens. And with regards to the regime, I think you mean the President Biden. The last time I spoke with a Biden aide, we yelled at each other. So that's the reality of the news business.
Oh, he's so adversarial. I don't know if you remember the first time he had Joe Biden's press secretary on his show, Brian Stelter. You know what his big first question was? Hey, where are we getting things wrong? And how could we cover the White House better? That's what he asked the paid liar, the press secretary from the White House. How could we cover you better? Not a question about why are you lying, but hey, we're not good enough for you. Could you help us become better news people so we could cover you in a more professional way? That's Brian Stelter's adversarial relationship with the White House. You want to say something?
I remember so many stories of all Brian Stelter does. His entire job is just to shill for what he calls established, verified, credentialed news sources against fake news. And I remember this guy, Manu Raju, remember the CNN correspondent? He was running around pushing a completely bogus story about that was planted by the DHS about Russia, scanning voter databases to, he was getting in the face of, members of Congress about this phony story, and it turned out to be it was discredited. And what does Stelter say? Instead of being kind of the ombudsman of CNN and saying how did we allow the intelligence agencies to plant a phony story with us? He just announced that Manu Raju has not been disciplined because he went through proper editorial channels. And there are just so many instances of that. His whole job is to cover for CNN. That's why they don't have an actual ombudsman. And if we go back to Hillary Clinton losing, remember the first speech she gave. The first thing she said after she lost was a speech about fake news, the danger of fake news.
Yeah.
And that was setting the stage for this entire racket that Brian Stelter and all these people are a part of that's being funded by billionaires like Omidyar, who are kind of like cutouts at these, Ivy League type schools. which are dedicated to disinformation. And it's just an end around to not have the government directly censor people, but to define everything that contravenes the objectives of the uniparty in Washington or undermines the centrist establishment as fake news, disinformation, because as we all know, it was fake news and the Russians that were responsible for Donald Trump winning, and we can never let that happen again. And so we all need to come together, stand against fake news. And who are the students that aren't putting up with this crap? It doesn't seem like these are the progressive students. Like these seem like kind of like Trumpian or students that are more on the MAGA side. They're the ones who are willing to talk about the establishment and the Hunter Biden laptop. We're not hearing that much from the left. Actually, when I talk about, what you mentioned about Metabiota, this NGO where Hunter Biden was rustling up the bucks through Rosemont Seneca, this firm he was invested in, to raise money for them to fund biolabs or bioresearch in Ukraine, which is just weird off the bat. When I talk about that, I see mostly like progressive blue check marks calling me Alex Jones, when it's just right there in the emails.
Right there.
And I mean,
they did that to me over everything, over Russiagate, over Venezuela, over Syria, over ivermectin. I'm like, no, this is from the NIH. It's not from me. But anyway, they did. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Facts don't matter. So when I grew up, it used to be the right-wing fundamentalist Christians who ignored evidence, facts, and reality, and I couldn't believe how politicians would pass. And now it's shifted. Now it's the Democrats who have no connection to reality. They live in a propagandized world that they enjoy and embrace. They don't mind.
Well, their ideology is reality.
Yes.
Their main goal is to control reality. If they can control reality, they can control the halls of power. And they are desperately afraid of those students and people like them, and that they call them populists.
Yes,
populism, because they're just people who aren't following traditional, verified, certified, established news sources. They're following fake news.
But you understand that the modus operandi for people from the Democratic Party to the corporate news, everywhere in the government, is to divide people.
Yeah.
Right. And so they can't have an Occupy Wall Street happen again. They can't have people come together around a common idea. So what they have to do is make every idea about identity politics. And what does identity politics leads to? It leads to tribalism. It separates everyone. That's what identity, and that's why they push it so hard. And that's why you're a bad person if you don't embrace every little thing of their identity politics. So they've now found a way to wedge us and keep us apart. And that's what these news people are there to do too. Brian Stelter is there to make you think that there's only one place that gets misinformation, and that would be Fox News or right-wing news media. These guys are the biggest liars. They do it for money. And they pretend like they don't like Donald Trump, but they couldn't get enough Donald Trump administration people on their panels. On CNN, they would have 8 people on. 4 of them would be from the Trump administration, and even including Donald Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski. They had him as a paid contributor to CNN while he was being paid by Trump.
Yep.
While he was being paid by Trump, they were also paying him for his expertise to come give it to you. Of course, you know what they're doing. Okay, so I just want to. So here's Ted Koppel talking to Brian Stelter a couple years ago. And he outs them. He outs CNN. Now, he can't say that this is a right-wing trope, right? What Ted Koppel's about to say to him. What Ted Koppel's about to say to him is that you guys love Donald Trump. You pretend to hate him, but you love him because of all the money you make off him. And watch how a room full of people laugh at Brian Stelter when he tries to tell you ratings don't matter.
Money. Donald Trump has been very, very good for baseball. He has been wonderful for the industry. Your boss acknowledged as much a number of months ago during the campaign.
Les Moonves,
Donald Trump, huh?
It was Les Moonves who acknowledged
Les Moonves also acknowledged it, but so did the head of CNN.
But that means what?
That
If ratings are up, that means what?
The ratings are up. It means you can't do without Donald Trump. You would be lost without Donald Trump.
Well, that is what he says.
Ted, you know that's not true.
CNN's ratings would be in the toilet without Donald Trump.
You know that's not true. You're playing for laughs. You've lived through enough presidencies to know
Hold on a
there
second,
will be more
Brian.
presidents.
What were the ratings before Trump and what are the ratings now?
I would say we might be up 20, we might be up 30%, we might be up 40%.
So this is the media critic for
Oh
CNN,
my God.
doesn't know what their own ratings are. Isn't that interesting? So he actually doesn't know, and he's stupid and an unbelievable incompetent because that's his job to know, or he does know and he's lying. I'm going to think it's both. Okay, here we go. So he goes, it doesn't matter if their ratings are up 40%. Now he said that doesn't matter. You know who? It only matters to everyone else at CNN besides him. Okay.
If we go back down 40%, that's okay too.
Well, it may not be okay,
Of
but
course it is. No, but hold on.
A room full of these people who are on his side just laughed in his face. A room full of people who are share his ideology. Brian Stelter just laughed in his face at his answer to Ted Koppel saying, you would be in the dumpster without Donald Trump. Let's be honest about it. He couldn't be honest about it. And so the room full of people laughed in his face. This is the guy who's supposed to be keeping it on it. He's defending democracy, and he's supposed to be the media critic, letting you know what's going on in media. So of course they hired that guy. Of course they hired him because he's going to do the bidding of the establishment, which he's doing right now. And he's doing it so poorly and so transparently a shill that the establishment people who are in that room are laughing at him.
The old establishment corporate media hacks, they knew media was a business and they were proud of it and they were good at making business.
So we're going to sell newspapers.
Yeah, they understood that. Brian Stelter is in a cult. He doesn't even understand his own sycophancy. He believes in CNN as an objective news source that is always true. And he is part of this new kind of cultist ethos that aims to control reality. And that's their only ideology. So you can see a younger Brian Stelter here being laughed at by the old generation that he replaced.
That's right.
And so he's so much more dangerous than them in that respect.
And just to remind you of how horrible CNN is, during the first 2 months of the pandemic, Cuomo interviewed his brother. Now, that's their number one news host on air a number of times. It was a hit with viewers, although it violated CNN's policy of not having Cuomo report on his brother, and was a programming choice that had grown worse with time and additional revelations. So they don't give a shit about the news. That, in fact, what this tells you is that all they care about is ratings, because they let him violate their own rule put in for him because it got good ratings. So now you know that Brian Stelter is a liar and a propagandist of the highest order, and his job is to make you think someone else is lying. Somebody else on YouTube is misinforming you. Somebody at Fox News is misinforming you. Tucker Carlson is misinforming you. The biggest liars and misinformers are everybody in the corporate news, and that includes Brian Stelter and everybody at CNN. In fact, here's another corporate hack who's going to make fun of Brian Stelter for this very thing.
In a small way, your network is involved in this story because, of course, the governor's brother, Chris Cuomo, has his show, the Cuomo Zone, on...
Is that what it's called?
I don't remember what it's called, but the Cuomo Zone.
Prime Time.
Cuomo Prime, 360 Cuomos, and he, the New York Times, has just reported, a report just dropped because it had been alleged that he was helping his brother with his, his communications team. New York Times is reporting that that's true. Chris was helping his brother. How does that create any conflict over at CNN behind closed doors? Are people mad at him, or is he in trouble?
Some people are mad at him. By the way, I can confirm the New York Times report. I'll confirm it for your viewers. I also have a source that says Chris was on the phone with his brother this week.
Is your source Chris Cuomo?
He is not. He is not. You got to have boundaries. You got to draw a line.
Why? He doesn't.
I think he does, actually.
Really?
I think Chris does.
So he's just a fool, right? And a comedian who's currently shilling for the establishment still embarrasses him. He's shilling for the establishment 24 hours a day, Stephen Colbert, and he still can't help but reveal what a fucking tool Brian Stelter is. He's there he is defending Chris Cuomo as if Chris Cuomo has ethics. And of course we know he doesn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen Colbert has become a parody of his former satirical self. So it's amazing to see him actually put Brian Stelter on the spot. And here you see Brian Stelter again, just being the ultimate sycophant, institution man. Like,
yes.
He's just, his whole life is dedicated to defending CNN and everything they represent. It's kind of interesting, though, to think about the whole Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo saga, because it was so obviously phony from the beginning and nepotistic that Chris Cuomo was having his brother on. I love you, brother. You're doing so well with COVID. And they were just like slobbering over each other. And while Andrew Cuomo was like exterminating the seniors and just listening and lying about it. And he was listening to the experts and listening to, the Imperial College, data, which led him to carry out all of these devastating decisions. But this is when the establishment decided to hang out the Cuomos to dry. And I still don't totally understand why they chose to do so at that time. I mean, obviously, Letitia James, the AG in New York, was part of it in her ambitions, but Andrew Cuomo was seen as a threat to other Democrats who are frontrunners in 2024. And it's also interesting to consider why the establishment media decided to confirm what we always knew to be true, which was that the Hunter Biden laptop was not Russian disinformation at the time they did. What does it say about Joe Biden's future? And who got that laptop into the hands of Rudy Giuliani and all that?
Yeah. How did that?
We don't know the full story.
And let me just to remind you how bad CNN is.
Oh my
Chris
God.
Cuomo airs moment he could finally emerge from the basement a week after leaving the basement. So they put together a fake news story pretending that the #1 host on CNN was quarantining in his basement when he had left a week earlier. They did a news segment about it. And then when they got caught lying, no one gave a shit.
Yeah.
Nobody paid a price for that. He should have been then laughed out of the business then. But that's not what did it. You're exactly right. And now here's Brian Stelter.
Can I just say one thing about that? That segment was one of the early segments on COVID where you got to follow someone going through the virus when most Americans had not had it yet. And the point was to scare them into submission. And so Chris Cuomo mendaciously terrorized Americans into being more afraid of this virus than they should have in order to comply with the lockdowns that were devastating their jobs, our economy. And he was a liar. I mean,
he was a liar, 100% liar.
How are you not going to go up those stairs right behind you?
Can you imagine if Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson or somebody at Fox News did a stunt like that? They would never stop talking about it. In fact, but when he did it at CNN, nobody ever started talking about it. They never started talking about it. It's amazing. And now here's how he covered Jesse Smollett. Now we all know, well, from day one, pretty much everybody knew what the story with Jesse Smollett was. Everybody knew what had happened. He'd staged this thing. Here's how Brian Stelter covered it.
From Fox, but this is a key part of the story, Nia, because I do think he just wants to get back to work. That's what a friend of Smollett just said to me. He wants to act.
I'm going to guess who that friend of Smollett's was. Was it your agent that you both share? I'm going to guess you both have the same agent, or maybe you have the same agency in Hollywood. Do you guys have the same agency who represents you in show business? Because that's what you're in. Listen to how he reports this.
He said it the same way he said to Stephen Colbert, like, I have a source, but it's really just an elite buddy, and that's who his sources are. So it's a bunch of elites in his ear.
Like he somehow was a gumshoe, and he tracked down this source, and he has a real deep throat. No, you mean, was your source Chris Cuomo?
I was working the phones all day. Yeah, exactly.
So let's watch this again.
From Fox, but this is a key part of the story, Nia, because I do think he just wants to get back to work. That's what a friend of Smollett just said to me. He wants to act. He wants to get back to work. He had actually been taken off 2 of the episodes of Empire. His future as a Hollywood actor has been in limbo for the past few weeks. So his lawyers have been trying to get to this point so that he can return to work. So far, no comment from the network, but I do think we will see Smollett get back to work because the narrative has once again changed from victim, to villain, back to victim. It's been very confusing, as Ryan.
It has not been confusing. It's only confusing for a guy like that who's paid to pretend like this is a confusing story. Now, Cenk Uygur also lied and ran interference for Jussie Smollett, pretending like we'll never know what happened. And that was right along the same time when he said Gillum in Florida couldn't have had crack because it was on the floor. So Jake Huger was doing a lot of that stuff, just like Brian Stelter's doing. Like, you're like, well, what's in it for them to lie? Why would Brian Stelter lie for Jussie Smollett? It has something to do with their agencies and their agents and their Hollywood connections. It has something to do with that. And they've been asked to do that as a favor or told to do that. And that's why he's couching it this way. He just wants to act. No, he was acting when he lied, which is why he's in prison.
Cenk isn't as clever. He just like uses like overwhelming bellicose emotion. He's just like one of those boxers who just comes at you with massive blows like Foreman. But Stelter, he's a little bit crafty. If you pay attention to the language he was using there, narratives are constantly shifting.
Yeah.
He's a victim and then he's not a victim. So here you see the attempt to control reality. He doesn't care about the facts. This is a legal case.
Yes.
And the only thing that matters are the facts that are established and put forward before a jury. But he's talking about narratives because he sees the media as the ultimate arbiter of the truth.
Yeah.
In other words, that they can actually turn falsehoods into reality.
Which they do all the time. Yeah.
That's his job.
So I don't want to spend too much time on Stelter. I just wanted to remind you what a tool CNN is via Brian Stelter. And that's what the Democrats think is real news. Good luck. Come see a live stand-up show or be in Orlando, Tampa, Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Las Vegas, Omaha, Des Moines, everywhere. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for our live show tickets. Also, become a premium member, get access to all our extra stuff, and help support the show. See you at a live show. Single tickets now available. Single tickets available.